This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 K-HOW.
Who's that? Producer Shannon?
Henry Gross. I grew up with this. Wow!
Who knew? There had to be a song about Shannon. I just hadn't heard that one before. When I first got to know our next guest, she was doing fill-in anchor kind of work on Fox News. And I said to her, because I am a fabulous judge of talent, that you are going to have your own show. You deserve your own show, and it'll be happening soon. And lo and behold, thanks primarily to my being a fabulous judge of talent, Shannon Bream is now the host of Fox News at Night, recently moved to midnight Eastern, 10 o'clock our time. She's a successful author, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today. And I will also add, the part of Shannon's job, the only part of Shannon's job that I remain kind of jealous of because I'm a nerd is that even though she's a big shot anchor, she is also still Fox News' Supreme Court reporter because she is, although she doesn't always love admitting it, also a lawyer by training and just one of the nicest, sweetest people you will ever meet in your whole life. Shannon Bream, welcome back to the show.
Ross, thank you so much for having me. It is always my treat.
I've got to ask you, just because, first of all, I like starting with random questions, and second, because one of your colleagues, also a super nice person and an author, Dana Perino, has made her dog famous. And we don't hear nearly as much about Biscuit as we hear about Jasper. So can you please tell us a little about Biscuit? Because I think Biscuit is feeling a little insecure.
You know, she's got her own Instagram account, at Biscuit Bream, and I feel like the world only needs so much of her and her antics. She loves to have a good time. She's running around the house right now because my husband is clearly her favorite human. And because he's upstairs right now and she's downstairs with me, she's doing this running around pacing, like, when is my favorite parent coming down the stairs? I need to talk to him. She is very sweet, and she's very smart. As I think labs tend to be. They will do anything for food. You can train them to do anything with a treat.
Biscuit's a white lab, or what's the technical name? It's very light colored.
It's English cream lab.
Cream.
You know, like she's going to have scones and tea for breakfast. I don't know, but she's got a bit of an accent. But she fits right in. We love her.
Cream Bream, English Cream Bream. And that's funny. You've got an English one, and I got a French bulldog. I don't know. I don't know how that, the English versus
We've
French
got a whole UN thing going on with her.
Yeah,
folks.
Exactly. Yeah, we could use the channel and have the dogs get together. All right, and before we get to your book, it's been, I want to talk about Supreme Court stuff a little bit, which is some of my favorite stuff to talk to you about because I'm a nerd. You have the actual training, but I'm just such a nerd when it comes to especially constitutional law at the federal level. I love this stuff. And it seems like there have been some opinions that have come out, but it's felt a little bit quieter than some recent seasons. And is that because there have recently been less important decisions, or because there's so much other insanity going on around us that they're not getting as much conversation? What's going on?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of that. And listen, you truly get the court. You know the court. I'll get emails from you, and I'll be like, gosh, nobody else is picking up on this thing, but like you're totally dialed in. You know legally what's going on and with the court. And they have been quiet, I do think, because there have been so many other big stories. But I think part of it, too, is that you know this. The Chief Justice wants to avoid any possibility of the court looking political. And so they've stayed out of a number of cases, including some election disputes. And there have been some critics who say, listen, they can't avoid the tough cases forever. I know that Roberts does not want them to get dragged into anything unnecessarily political, but some cases, just by definition, that's what they're going to be. And, Justice Thomas has been among those who will pipe up and say, listen, we're not taking a Second Amendment case. There are big ones out there. Why are we treating this as, in his words, a disfavored constitutional right? So you got to get to 4 votes to get something onto the calendar, as you know, and I think there just haven't been the votes there, but the court has changed a lot in the last couple of years, and I think that may change as well.
you are quite steadfast and remarkably successful at not letting your own personal political views seep into your reporting. I wish a lot more people would take lessons from you. I ask this question in the context not of your opinions or desires for policy or law, but just as an analyst of the court, how do you think the replacement of Ruth Bader Ginsburg after she passed away with Amy Coney Barrett has changed the court?
There's no way it couldn't. I mean, that is sort of a seismic change to replace somebody who was very much a champion of the left and of progressive issues and outspoken on those, to somebody who I think ideologically is probably in a completely different place than Justice Ginsburg was. We're just starting to see Justice Barrett bubble out in a few opinions and concurrences and those kinds of things. So we're starting to get a flavor for her, what she'll be as a justice on the court. And I do think it's going to make a difference in some of the cases that they take. She hasn't shied away as a judge in other contexts, in the lower court where you take everything that comes to you. I mean, she has weighed in on weighty issues and issues of the Second Amendment and others that we think they may be getting ready to take up. So I don't think that she's going to be a shy and retiring justice. I think, like all new justices, she's getting her footing and getting plugged in and doing the hard work that was waiting for her the minute she walked in the door. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just long term. It will be an incredible change in the court. Just from that one vote, could change a lot.
And my last question for you before we start talking about your book is, how are you liking or not liking or dealing with your show being at a new time now, midnight Eastern instead of 11 o'clock Eastern? I mean, you're kind of a night owl anyway, so maybe it's not that big a change for you. But how is that for you?
No, listen, my team is gung-ho. I've got a lot of night owls. And so for us, it didn't feel like a huge shift. I know that Fox has always wanted to wrap up the programming for the day with live news because, the news cycle is 24/7 now. So we love being in that spot. We're awake and ready to go. And now we have the very entertaining Greg Gutfeld kicking us off. So it's a new season. Like you said, midnight East, 9 Pacific. And it's funny because I've heard from some people now further out west, like, hey, the time slot change works for us. And like, hey, we're here for you. So if it works for your programming, we're here for you, whatever time of day or night you may be up.
Excellent. Well, look, if you're happy, then I'm happy. There is a part of me that wishes there were more straight news kind of in that main primetime area, especially because I go to bed early. It was already hard for me to watch you at 9-hour time. It's really hard for me to watch you at 10-hour time. But now we have all opinion for several hours, and I don't love that. But if you're happy, I'm happy as far as your show goes.
I am, and that block is so successful for us, and our viewers love it. And I think, Tucker and Sean and Laura and now Greg all have such different styles in the way that they kind of attack the day, the news of the day, and obviously Craig has got a very cheeky take on things. Yeah. So I think people, they're interested in, especially at the end of the day, a different look at things. And I think he very much has a perspective that's different than anything else out there, especially the late night quote unquote comedy shows. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really interesting to see how he tackles things.
Yeah, me too. And Greg a little bit, and Kat Timpf in particular, and Tyrus a little, that crew, they lean a little libertarian, which is where I am. Where some of the other, where certainly Laura and Sean are more conservative than I am. So I do like that. I do like that show as well. Anyway,
maybe you'll have to join them sometime. I'll put in a good word.
Yeah, that would be really good. Okay, now.
Way past your bedtime.
You got a new book. I'm holding it in my hand right here. Folks watching me live on Facebook right now can see it. The Women of the Bible Speak. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of the book, I'd just love to show listeners the couple pages in here. This book is signed to me by you, and it says, "God bless you, Ross." And I know that when you write that, you really mean it, unlike some other people. I have a question for you.
I do.
Under your signature, it says Psalm 105. What is that?
It's, "The Lord is good. His faithfulness endures forever to all generations."
And why did you pick
Depending on
that one?
your version. You know what? To me, God is good. And I think that in these stories, we see good and bad people go through really crazy trials and frightening circumstances. And others just have a broken heart over something, maybe an illness or infertility. Like, God is working through all of these stories, and you can really see it. I don't have to add anything to these stories. I just think a lot of people didn't know them. So to unearth them and put them in this book, I think just it illustrates that even in the tough things, He is working, and He sees and He hears us, and He knows what we struggle with.
You know, you are a faithful Christian. I am a not particularly religious Jew. And so when I got this book, I was wondering, how many stories are there going to be in here that kind of, and I've read the New Testament, by the way, as well as the Old. But there are lots of stories in here from the Old Testament that I knew at least a little bit. But I got to say, there's so much new information here, even for those of us who have done a fair amount of New or Old Testament study. I might just jump into the middle for a second. Tamar. Tell us about Tamar.
Yeah. This is the one that we say, this is not an easy story to tell like in Sunday school. You kind of gloss this one over with the kids if you get to this when you're in charge.
Yeah.
Because she was married, and her first husband, we're told, was wicked. God took him out. So, the law or the custom of the day would have been that the next oldest son in line, would take her as his wife, and then the first child they would have would actually be considered the heir of the original husband to preserve those rights. She marries the second husband. He's also a very wicked guy. God takes him out. So her father-in-law now comes to her. There's another son, but he's got to be thinking, like, what's going on here? I don't want to lose another son. Is it her? What's happening?
Mm-hmm.
So he sends her back to her family, which was not a cool thing. I mean, she's now widowed twice, sent back to her family, and it doesn't look like he really intends on giving her that third son, and she comes to figure that out. So she cooks up this very questionable plan, disguises herself, veils herself as a prostitute in an area where she knows that her father-in-law is going to be traveling. He's widowed now. He goes to her as a prostitute, sleeps with her, and for payment, he doesn't apparently have the regular sense of payment with him, so he leaves his staff and his ring, which are as close as you're going to get to sort of a DNA match in those days. She turns up months later pregnant. He is now outraged that this daughter-in-law of his is pregnant outside of marriage. He calls for her to be burned alive, and instead of publicly humiliating him, she sends the staff and the ring and says, this is the person who's the father of this child. And he says, you know what, she's more righteous than I am. He recognizes that, he double-crossed her. I mean, he left her in a terrible place by not fulfilling his obligation to her to give her that third son. And she doesn't publicly embarrass him, but she certainly has taken a very unusual track towards fulfilling the plan in the way she thought best. She ends up having twins, and they're actually in the lineage of Christ. And I think, even through this story that at best is a bad decision, God's working through it, and there's redemption in the story, and there are lessons to learn in every one of these stories.
It's interesting in how many of the stories, starting right off with the first one in the book about Sarah and Hagar, a lot of it is about bad decisions and how those play out. And I do find that really interesting. Shannon Bream's new book is called The Women of the Bible Speak. I've heard you, seen you interviewed about the book several times, and everybody asks you why you decided to write about women. So I'm not going to. I am going to ask you instead why each chapter is about at least two women. And I don't think there's any chapter that is about only one woman.
Mm-hmm. You are right. We decided to look at them and kind of find the common themes or lessons. And some of these women knew each other. I mean, they were sisters, or they lived in the same household, that kind of thing. But others who lived centuries apart, but we still thought there was a common thread. Queen Esther and Rahab the prostitute, that's a good example to me. I really wanted to include Rahab because both of these women found themselves in a position where they had to have a lot of courage, and there was a lot at risk. I mean, their very lives, both of them. But they were put into these positions where when they found the courage, when they stepped up, that they were able to save the Jewish people and help them to score enormous victories that really, in Queen Esther's case, it was their very survival. And so I love that there's that common theme with each of them, and just watching how they got to that place where they decided they would risk everything in those moments. So every chapter sort of has a common lesson as we look at them in pairs.
So the one name, and again, because I'm Jewish, I suppose it's not that surprising. The one name in your book that I didn't know is Martha of Bethany. Who is that?
Mm-hmm. Well, Mary and Martha are known for being the sisters of Lazarus, one of Jesus' miracles, and, was raising Lazarus from the dead. They were very close friends with him. They're part of his inner circle. And Mary and Martha, Jesus is visiting in their home, and Mary is there studying at his feet, and Martha is running around serving everybody and doing the, hors d'oeuvres or whatever's happening. And she gets very frustrated because Mary's not helping her. So she goes to Jesus to kind of make her case and says, "Why don't you tell Mary to help me?" And he says, "You know what? She has chosen her way, and it's actually the better thing. She's studying with me. Not that what Martha was doing was a bad thing." And I think that's an important lesson, that we can be in service to other people. Those are good things. But when it came down to it, Christ said, if you're going to, decide between walking with me, studying with me, I would choose that over the service and being busy about tasks and, waiting on people. They're both doing good things, but Jesus highlighting that spending the time with him was the more important thing. But there's this conversation a lot of times in Christian communities and women's Bible studies. Are you on Mary or are you on Martha? And I thought I got to include these sisters. There's a lot we see from them in their stories.
Yeah, as I'm reading through your book, one of the things that I was reminded of is that the Bible really is full of quite interesting stories. And I had sort of forgotten that, I guess, being not a very religious person. And it is... it's really interesting to get back and see these stories, and you write about these women as people, and there's a lot of psychology in it, and I find it really fascinating. It's very well done.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, like I said, these stories are fascinating in their own right. If we can just take them from the Bible that maybe somebody wouldn't be comfortable picking up, or it's not their thing, but they'll read these stories the way that we've put them together and hear about these women they never have heard of before. It's a gift to be able to do that and just share them because, like I said, these women and the troubles they faced centuries ago very much translate to today and things that women face today. And I hope by looking at their stories and seeing how they walked through them and found the courage and the faith that they needed, that people will feel like that's still available to them today, whatever they're facing.
Shannon Bream's new book is called The Women of the Bible Speak. You know what? Whether you are a devout person or a little less, whether you're Christian or Jewish or anything else, it's a really good read. It's a really fun read. It's an educational read as well. And so thanks for writing it, and thanks for being here. And say hi to Sheldon and Biscuit for us.
I will. Ross, have a great day. You and producer Shannon.
Absolutely will. Talk to you soon, Shannon. Thanks.
Thanks, Ross.
Bye. All right. There you go. Shannon Bream, The Women of the Bible Speak. I don't know what's in the water over there, but she and Dana Perino are the two of the nicest people you will ever meet in your whole life. There's nobody sweeter than Shannon Bream. Just such a sweetheart. Anyway, there you go. I thought it would be kind of fun to have that, and I thought some folks might find that conversation a little bit unexpected.